Hello, everyone. My name is Cindy Guzman, and I am a second-year Sociology and Education and Transformation Studies major with a minor in Chicanic Studies. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can get started with this presentation. So the title of my research is Examining How the Anti-Immigrant Political Climate Impacts Latinx Undergraduate Students at UCLA. Latinx students are not always supported throughout their journey of pursuing higher education. Many of them attend low-income public schools that do not have the resources to properly prepare the students to apply, attend, or succeed in higher education. Trump publicly criminalizes, discriminates, and bullies minority communities, which instills fear and anxiety. This fear and anxiety can cause doubt among Latinx college students due to internalizing what Trump says in the media, which can impact their grades negatively and ultimately their ability to graduate. Going to college during the Trump era can take a toll on Latinx students, whether or not they acknowledge it at that time. This study aims to discover how much of an impact Trump can have on Latinx college students and their educational journey. So the research question that I was really focused on while conducting this specific research was, how does Trump's rhetoric and presence in the media impact Latinx undergraduate students at UCLA? So there has been previous research regarding the topic of how Trump's presidential campaign and term has impacted Latinx students. However, the existing research has not been geared towards how undergraduate students have been impacted and learned to cope with the derogatory terms being stated in the media. This research aims to give a voice to a historically disregarded population and to gain more of an insight as to what these students have been dealing with since the election of Trump in 2016. So on the left-hand side, I just have a tweet by Donald Trump, which reads, "So true, Jeb Bush is crazy. Who cares that he speaks Mexican? This is America, English." And on the right side of the screen, we have another tweet, which reads, "What you really should be angry about is the invasion of millions of illegals taking over America, not Donald Trump." So these are just some quotes from Donald Trump in which he's depicting Latinx people in a negative light. So here I have some quotes from the literature review that I conducted, which I thought were really powerful. So the first one on the left-hand side of the screen reads, "The Trump effect is a term being used to describe increased incidence of racist, xenophobic, and misogynistic behaviors as a result of Donald Trump's rhetoric." And the one in the middle right here reads, "While there is not sufficient evidence to support a causational relationship, the election of Donald Trump is seemingly associated with an increase of persistent fear and anxiety among non-white and low socioeconomic status students." So I chose these quotes in specific because they summarize major themes in the literature, such as the Trump effect, the association between Trump's election and the fear and anxiety of non-white students, and how Trump impacts the US-born students. So I recruited participants through social media and in-person outreach. I also conducted 5 interviews from which were volunteers who also participated in the survey. So they left their contact information and I was able to contact them through there. And the data was collected using an anonymous online survey. The survey assessed how aware they were of Trump's comments towards the Latinx and immigrant community, how the election of Donald Trump as president has impacted their studies, and to what extent the rhetoric about their community has made them doubt their abilities and admission into UCLA. A total of 5 interviews were conducted to gain more of an insight on how Trump's use of bullying words can have a direct negative impact on university Latinx students. We had a total of 68 participants, 67 of which were UCLA undergrad students who identified as Latinx, and 1 student who identified as non-Latinx. So here I have some screenshots of the graphs from the survey that we had the students fill out. And on the first graph on the upper left of the screen right here, that reads, "How often have you seen/heard the comments that President Trump has made about minority communities?" So for this study in specific, what qualifies as significant was 4 and 5 on the scale, as you can see pictured inside this red circle. So for this graph, 93% of students reported seeing/hearing the comments that President Trump has made about minority communities. The second graph on the upper right of the screen, right over here, reads, "The way the president depicts immigrants and Latinx people impacts the quality of my life." So inside the red circle, you can see that 62% of the students reported that the way the president depicts immigrants and Latinx people impacted the quality of their life. And on the third graph in the lower middle of the screen, right over here, reads, "I have often questioned my place in admission into UCLA." So inside the red circle, you can see that 60% of the students who took the survey have questioned their place in admission into UCLA. So as you can see from these results, Latinx students have been greatly impacted by the election of Donald Trump. So as I mentioned, I also conducted interviews, and these are some powerful quotes from the interviews that I would like to share with you all. So the first one on the left side of the screen, it says, "The rhetoric about immigrants and Latinx people has impacted the quality of my education." So she later went on to explain that even though she personally hasn't experienced racism from a professor or another student at UCLA, she can still feel the tension, and she knows that the tension exists. In the middle right here, this quote reads, "A lot of the vocabulary Trump uses is very unpresidential. As a DACA student and someone who has parents who are undocumented, we easily get alarmed. It's very triggering for us." And then the last quote on the left side of the screen, I apologize, on the right side of the screen, it says, "I've learned to overcome the stereotypes and comments that are often used against Latinx students because my parents have motivated me. I don't have that status, so I'm reaching not only my goals, but the goals that my parents had for us." So some summary of the King findings. Undergraduate Latinx students at UCLA seem to be overwhelmingly aware of the comments that Trump makes about their community, most of which are negative. Many of the students' lives have been impacted by the way their community is being depicted in the media. This could be due to discrimination from others or from doubting their own abilities. And some students feel as if others do not think they are capable of succeeding at an institution such as UCLA. And that can cause them to question their admission to the university and or further motivate them to succeed. So we did find that some students are in fact motivated by people doubting their own abilities, because by them going to school and succeeding is how they're going to prove those people wrong. So some future directions are conducting more in-depth interviews to include more personal anecdotes, diversifying research to include all nationalities Latinx students might identify as. So a lot of the research is Mexican oriented, and it would be really good to capture the stories of other students, such as Central American students also. Explore how specifically the school climate impacts Latinx students. For example, whether or not the university focuses on ensuring the students feel welcomed and safe really matters, and it also matters whether or not they have a large focus on diversity. And lastly, conduct a study at other universities to explore and identify trends across different campuses. A Latinx student who attends UCLA might have a different experience compared to someone who attends the University of Michigan, and that's very important to point out as well. So I would just like to end this presentation with some acknowledgements. I would like to thank all of the students who participated in this research. Their stories are empowering. I would also like to thank Dr. Pedro Noguera, Jasmine Cureño, Abir Hussein, and Dr. San Juan for your constant mentorship and support. And last but definitely not least, I would like to thank my parents for your sacrifices. Sin ustedes, yo no estaría donde estoy hoy. So I would just like to thank everyone for listening, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day.